In this episode, we talk about a man from Chhattisgarh who has been struggling to bury his father. We also talk about a Delhi couple whose bank accounts had been frozen for unexplained reasons for over 3 years. But first, we talk about Brij Bhushan Sharan Singh and how the Wrestling Federation has continued to maintain ties with him. Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargava, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. Many of you may recall that in early 2023, 6 women wrestlers accused Brij Bhushan Sharan Singh, a 5-time BJP MP and former Wrestling Federation of India chief, of sexual harassment, inappropriate touching and groping. In fact, 2 of them had said that the incidents with them took place at the Wrestling Federation's office, which was located within Brij Bhushan's MP bungalow at 21 Ashoka Road in Delhi.
So the police filed a charge sheet and charges were framed, charges of outraging the modesty of a woman and sexual harassment. And the case is going on in a Delhi court.
That's the Indian Express's Nihal Koshie, who has been reporting on the case for the paper.
And of course, there were protests. Initially, the wrestlers were in protest at Jantar Mantar for 3 days. They were assured of action. They were not happy with what happened. So they came to this Jantar Mantar again and protested for nearly 2 months.
और हर एक एथलीट को पता है कि हम किस दौर से गुजर रहे हैं. इतना मेंटल टॉर्चर हुई थी कि मैं मरने तक की स्टेज तक चली गई थी. मैं हर दिन खुदकुशी करने की सोच रही थी. क्या मैं अगर मेरे को कुछ हो जाता, मेरी फैमिली क्या करती, मतलब मेरे बाद कौन जिम्मेदारी लेता इस चीज की. और मैं आज भी बोल रही हूँ, अगर किसी भी खिलाड़ी को कुछ भी होगा रेसलिंग में, तो प्रेसिडेंट, देश जो हमारे रेसलिंग प्रेसिडेंट है, वो जिम्मेदार रहेंगे.
They threatened to throw their medals in Haridwar. They went to Haridwar to throw the medals, and then they didn't. Last minute, they said that they won't. But then they marched to Parliament. They were arrested on the day of the inauguration of the new Parliament.
जैसा कि आप सब जानते हैं, आज महिला सम्मान महापंचायत करने जा रहे हैं हम नई संसद के सामने. जितने भी हमारे बड़े खाप पंचायत, किसान नेता, महिला संगठन, सबके जो बड़े बड़े नेता थे, उनको गिरफ्तार कर लिया गया है, जेल में डाल दिया गया है. जहां एक तरफ तो नए संसद का उद्घाटन देके मैसेज दिया जा रहा है और दूसरी तरफ लोकतंत्र की हत्या की जा रही है. हम
there was a lot of protest, and that is what happened. So there was a lot of pressure on the central government also, because Brij Bhushan at that point was a BJP MP.
Later, the Sports Ministry suspended the Wrestling Federation of India, though Nihal says that it still has the recognition of the sport's international governing body, the United World Wrestling.
So, in a way, it's a tricky situation for the sport, because here the ministry doesn't recognize the Wrestling Federation of India, but United World Wrestling recognizes. So the wrestlers are caught in a bit of this mess, because sometimes it takes time for entries to go through, for entries to be cleared, all that. And of course, Brij Bhushan's camp and people who he has influence over continue to run wrestling. That is very clear.
Now, the sexual harassment trial against Singh is still going on in a Delhi court, and charges have been framed against him. But it turns out that the WFI has still not snapped ties with him. And this is clear because Nihal found out that the WFI is still being run from inside Brij Bhushan's bungalow.
So why this is significant is because the WFI office, since the time Brij Bhushan was president for almost a decade, was run from within his house. When I say within his house, there's a small second annex or a building just next to his MP bungalow. We can enter through the side gate, and then you walk into the WFI office. It's a typical federation office with files and computers and staff working there. So that was how the WFI functioned before the protest started and the controversy erupted, during the protests, and that was Brij Bhushan's house. He has an office just across the hallway and he sits there. So the WFI was functioning from 21 Ashoka Road. Then when the sports ministry suspended them, one of the reasons they said was the WFI office continues to function from the premises of former office bearers who have influence. So the WFI said, we are moving out, the newly elected body, which was suspended by the sports ministry, to an address in Harinagar.
Harinagar is around 15 kilometers away from Brij Bhushan's bungalow. Now, after the announcement, there were visuals of employees now working from Harinagar, and a board was put up at the new entrance which said the Wrestling Federation of India. But when Nihal went there in June last year, he found out that the office was shut.
So I asked the adjoining offices, those old buildings, the office, every second door is the office. So they said, yes, WFI used to function from here, but they left a few months back. So I said, okay, fine. And then another person said they went to Connaught Place. I said, okay, fine. So then I did a little looking around and I realized that they are not in Harinagar at all. I checked and I visited the place another 2 times just to be sure. So the door was again locked. So then I was trying to figure out where they are working from. I had a feeling they are working from Ashoka Road, but I couldn't confirm it. So then I went to Ashoka Road last week. And on the gate, the nameplate is still Brij Bhushan Sharan Singh's. And there were posters of, I think, some party workers greeting him on his birthday. So that was there.
When he walked into the office, he found out that all the old hands were sitting there.
So they said, yeah, we are working from here. We used to work in Harinagar for a few months, but we are back here. It was business as usual. There were entries being filled. There were wrestling certificates, files. Basically, nothing has changed. And the same old faces were there. Yeah, so that was that. And then I wanted to meet I was told that Brij Bhushan Sharan Singh is there. So I thought I'd meet him. I met him. He was just there in the room across the hall where he greets visitors. And there was a long line of visitors to greet him. Politicians, party workers, businessmen. So he greeted me very warmly. He said he doesn't want to talk about wrestling. And then we spoke about Delhi politics, the affairs in Uttar Pradesh. And towards the end, I asked him about wrestling. So he said, no, I don't have any connection with wrestling anymore. And then I said, your office functions from here. He said, no, the office doesn't function from here. It's from ashram. I said, okay. And then he said that when I started asking him too many questions about wrestling, I guess he also said that, okay, let's end the meeting now. I'll meet you another time. It was a pleasant meeting. And I asked him the questions. He didn't want to reply. Fair enough, because technically he is no longer with the WFI. That house now has been allotted to his son, which our political correspondent Liz Matthew confirmed, has been allotted to son Karan Bhushan Singh, who contested from the Kaizarganj constituency, which was Brij Bhushan's constituency. But because of the controversy and the sexual harassment allegations, Brij Bhushan didn't get a ticket from a stronghold, but his son Karan Bhushan Singh got a ticket, and he's won the election from Kaizarganj, and he's got that house. The nameplate is still Brij Bhushan's. So, in a way, Brij Bhushan was at his son's house with the WFI office functioning there, but it's long time been Brij Bhushan's. It's basically still Brij Bhushan's house. People come to meet Brij Bhushan.
So, after confirming with the staff, he contacted one of the WFI officials, who at first insisted that the office had moved to Harinagar.
So when I said I went to Harinagar, there's no office there. I went there thrice. I went to Ashoka Road. Office staff is sitting there. He said, yeah, what is wrong with that? In this day and age, you can work from anywhere. So I said, but isn't your office supposed to be in Harinagar? He said, it is in Harinagar. Then I said, what about the staff at Ashoka Road? He said, yeah, staff can work from wherever they are comfortable. They are working from both places. And he said that, see, you are working from office, but do you always work from office? No, you may be sitting at home with your phone and working. So that can also be your office. He basically was saying you can work from anywhere in the modern age. But that was when he was caught in a spot of bother, because he didn't realize that I had gone to both the places. And when I told him that, he said, yeah, they may be working from both places. So then after the multiple visits to Harinagar, talking to people, going to Ashoka Road and meeting Brij Bhushan himself, talking to the staff, we put out a story saying that the office is back, the staff is back at 21 Ashoka Road.
He says the next day, after the story was published, the WFI president Sanjay Singh again claimed that they were working from Harinagar.
So then I again went to Harinagar just to expose their lie. So again I went there. The office was there. There was a property consultant there. He didn't want to be named, but he gave me the whole lowdown. He said that the WFI was there for a while, I think till around May, and then they left, and then that office was empty for about 4 to 5 months. He moved in there because the adjoining building in which he has an office, there's a lift being installed, so he couldn't sit there, so he moved here. And he's the guy who leases out most of the properties. So he said there's nowhere in Harinagar is there a WFI office. I spoke to the other owners also. They all said that they left many months ago. I checked with multiple owners, with multiple people. There is no WFI office there. And then we put out a second story, nailing the lie. And why Ashoka Road is a problem is the same place where 2 women alleged that Brij Bhushan touched them inappropriately, tried to grope them, the sexual harassment allegations. And the sports ministry said you can't function from there. But it seems to be functioning it is functioning from there.
This is very astounding because, the protests had received national limelight, newspapers and TV channels had covered it extensively. And now you have a charge sheet filed against him and the case is still going on. and yet the WFI and the BJP have not cut ties with him. What do you think that says about just how strong his hold is over the region?
So yeah, Brij Bhushan is quite influential in Gonda and the adjoining districts. And he's been with the BJP for so many years. He is a very powerful politician and he's very influential. He has colleges, he has educational institutions, and he's been with the party for a long time. And also the fact that it took a long time for the government to take action against him during the protests. So he has, what we can gather from this is he has a lot of influence. And also the fact that even though he didn't get a ticket, his son got a ticket from Kaizerganj. I mean, it's as good as the father getting a ticket because the father is the powerful politician here. And the son won by a huge margin. So that is actually a stamp of approval for Brij Bhushan in his constituency still. And the fact that the son got the ticket also shows that actually the BJP hasn't cut ties with Brij Bhushan yet for whatever reason. They may be political, it may be any other reason, but they haven't fully cut ties. And also the fact that, yes, the WFI office moving back, I don't know, it just shows that they think it's okay, you know. In a way, Brij Bhushan still controls the WFI, which is known if you know who runs who Sanjay Singh is, who's the current president, the other office bearers. They are all Brij Bhushan's men, you know. I mean, they are his loyalists. So, in a way, I think if you put 2 and 2 together, you know who is still running wrestling in India.
And next we talk about how a village in Chhattisgarh has been stopping a man from giving his father a proper burial. This is the Chinchwada village that lies in the district of Bastar. And the man in question is Ramesh Baghel. When we spoke to the Indian Express's Jayprakash Naidu, he told us more about him.
So Ramesh comes from a Mahara community, that's a scheduled caste community. His grandfather and his father converted to Christianity in the 1980s. His father Subhash was a pastor and he died on January 7th this year.
Right, and since then Ramesh has really struggled to arrange a burial for his father. Can you tell us why the villagers have been opposing it?
Yes, so they are opposing because Ramesh's family converted to Christianity and they allegedly stopped believing in the Rudi Parampara. Rudi Parampara being age-old tribal traditions and culture. The villagers say those converted have given up on the Rudi Parampara and then they should also give up on the graveyard and bury the bodies outside the village. The Christian people. The villagers are also alleging that the conversions are leading to demographic changes which is affecting the identity and they may eventually lose the identity. About the demographics, as per the government data, the village has 6,450 people in which 6,000 are tribals and remaining 450 are Maharas. That is the community of Ramesh. Now in this 450 Maharas, 100 are Christians, but the Christian community over there claims that over more than 200 people in the Mahara community have converted to Christianity.
And Jayprakash, since when has this village been witnessing these issues regarding burials?
Yeah, so last year in February, the Gram Panchayats passed a resolution where any person, whether pastor, saint, guru or any committee, challenges or tries to change their Rudi Parampara, then they will be fined. And those who have given up on the Rudi Parampara, like the Christians, will not be allowed to bury their dead ones in the village graveyard. So this resolution has like 13 points and this was one of the points in the resolution.
Right, and in light of these protests, talk about the kind of efforts that Ramesh has made to make this burial possible.
So, with the support of local Christian organizations, he decided to keep his father's body at a mortuary in Jagdalpur city, that is about 45 kilometers away from his village. And then he approached the High Court, which is again about 450 kilometers away from his village. But his plea was disposed, citing accepting his plea could lead to unrest and disharmony in public at large. And the High Court also observed that there is a designated Christian graveyard in Karkapal, which is 20 to 25 kilometers away from the village. However, Ramesh was disappointed. He challenged the High Court order in the Supreme Court.
Yeah, and the matter was heard by the Supreme Court on Monday. Could you talk about what the court said about it?
So the matter was first heard by the Supreme Court on January 18, when the court said it was pained to see that a person has approached the court to bury his father. It asked government officials to file an affidavit, and finally on Monday, the two-bench judge differed in their judgments. Justice B.V. Nagaratna allowed burial in Ramesh's private agricultural land, but Justice S.C. Sharma said burial must be in designated place for Christians, which is in Karkapal village. But as the body of Ramesh's father was kept in morgue for 3 weeks now, the judges agreed on burial in Karkapal village.
And you talked about how Ramesh's family converted in the past. Could you talk a bit more about his family history and what he shared with you?
So his family has been living in the village for generations. Their source of income was farming and a grocery shop. So in the 80s, his family converted to Christianity. His grandfather Lakheshwar was an elderly person at that time, and he, along with his son, that is Subhash, they accepted Christianity. And then later on, Subhash, that is Ramesh's father, became a pastor. And Ramesh said that the religion helped his father to give up on his bad habits, like, he used to assault his mother, he used to abuse, he used to consume alcohol. So after accepting Christianity, he said that he came in touch with good people and he became disciplined, and this ultimately led to a complete change in the economic condition. First, they had a cycle and they should travel 35 kilometers on the cycle to bring materials for their grocery shop. Then slowly from one cycle to two cycle, and finally they have 2 cars now.
And although we are talking about Ramesh's case, he's obviously not the only person likely to face this issue. So tell us about how the other non-tribal communities in the village perceive this issue.
Yeah, so the other non-tribal communities are divided as well. Some are supporting Ramesh, alleging that politicians are using the issue to divide the people, while others from the Mara community who see themselves as Hindus are supporting the tribals.
And also, Jay, what kind of support has Ramesh received from the local administration and the local security forces there?
No support at all. I've spoken with the police, so they said that they do not want to interfere in this issue. A senior officer told me that their work is just to ensure there is no law and order problem. The Tehsildar told me that she has no role to play in it.
And the central issue in this case is obviously conversions, right? In the past, we've seen tensions arise in different villages across the state when it comes to conversions. So could you talk more about that, and since when that has been on the rise?
So as per my sources in the police, they're telling me that the undercurrent has been there. Even the villagers told me that the undercurrent has been there for more than 5 years. But the issue began in 2017 when, people started creating issue of the burials. And in 2023 January, tribals had vandalized a church in Narayanpur. It was the same issue about conversions and burials. And back then they had also assaulted the SP of Narayanpur who was bleeding. It was widely covered. Then over 100 Christian tribals were socially boycotted from their villages, from different villages in Kanker and Narayanpur, Kondagaon, and these are districts in Bastar region. And then they came and they were living in an indoor stadium in Narayanpur. So somehow the peace was made and they were sent back. But yes, burials have always been an issue. It's not something new. For the past few years, there have been several innumerable cases where objections have been raised over burials of Christians.
And in the end, we talk about how a couple living in Delhi suddenly found their bank accounts frozen. This is Bhavya Singh and Amit Kumar Singh, who run a retail garment shop called Kudos. Now, back in January 2022, Amit was trying to make a payment to a wholesale vendor he had purchased clothes from. But the transaction simply would not go through. The Indian Express's Sohini Ghosh tells us what happened next.
So they immediately contacted their bank, ICICI Bank. So this was basically an account, a current account linked to their business transactions. And once they contacted the bank, their local bank guy, they got to know their account has been frozen, debit frozen to be specific, which basically means that money can come into the account, but it can't go out. So they can't make any transfers or any payment.
They were completely puzzled and had no idea why this was happening.
So they continued visiting the bank, made written requests, made some emails, tried talking to the bank manager at the branch. And after a few days, they get to know that their bank has been actually ordered to be frozen by the Enforcement Directorate.
The Enforcement Directorate, as many of you would know, is India's premier economic intelligence agency.
And this was kind of a big shock to the couple because they could not figure out why would the enforcement directorate order for such a thing for an account linked to a very basic business where they have, according to them, transactions of around 2,000 or 3,000 a day. And secondly, they also could not figure out, because ED is supposed to be this big central agency looking at financial crimes, and they have no criminal history. They have never even gotten into a skirmish or a traffic accident, nothing of the sort. So they could not figure out how this was all coming together.
So in order to look for answers, the couple began getting in touch with the ED and the RBI. They wrote emails, made phone calls, but none of it worked. Until the ED informed them that their bank account had been frozen due to their alleged involvement in money laundering, which again came as a complete shock to the couple.
Now, their shop, the government shop, which is at Mahavir Enclave, they've been running that since 2019. It's named as Kudos. And they still could not understand how this entire thing was unfolding. And in the meantime, their business was suffering because transaction became an issue and they had to then link to their personal accounts for daily transactions. So that kind of disrupted the activity. Then there was COVID going on because remember, this happened in Jan 2022 and we were still in the midst of COVID back then. So ultimately, after months of correspondence, they came in touch with few lawyers, and the lawyers basically suggested the couple that you file a petition in Delhi High Court.
This was in March 2024, over 2 years after their accounts first got frozen.
And the same month, the High Court had taken the matter up. And at the time, they had simply issued notice, basically seeking a response from RBI, ICICI Bank and Enforcement Directorate on the claims they were making. That, their bank account has been frozen. They're completely puzzled. They don't know why it has been frozen. And they have no criminal antecedents. And basically, they wanted to get a response to that.
The other thing that happened to the couple was that a few months after their account was frozen, around 1 lakh rupees also disappeared from it.
And they again made a second round of bank, RBI, ED. And that is when they got to know from the bank that it has been transferred out upon instructions from the ED, basically as a lock-in system.
In their plea to the High Court, they made sure to mention this detail as well. Now, after waiting for 3 years, it was only earlier this month that the couple finally found out what was going on. This happened after the ED finally responded to the petition.
So they come before the Delhi High Court and point blank, they say that, okay, sorry, this is unfortunately a case of mistaken identity. Basically, we were basically trying to freeze the bank accounts of this one entity known as Kudos Finance and Investment Private Limited. And because of the similar first name, we ended up freezing this Kudos bank account as well. And as a result, the around 1 lakh rupees was also taken out.
So the agency mistook Kudos, a finance company, with Kudos, a clothing store.
So Delhi High Court in an order has basically said that the money be transferred back to the account, the Kudos retail garment shop account, and obviously to defreeze the account.
Sohini says a case like this and even an admission like this is very rare.
And this is something that even the lawyers were attesting to, that they have not really come across, at least not in the public domain, of similar cases, examples of similar cases. I mean, also, to be fair, the Enforcement Directorate did not really have an option but to admit their mistake in this case. I mean, yeah, they were pretty much cornered here. But of course, this is a very rare case.
Now, the couple said that the ED should have admitted to its mistake much earlier, instead of them having to file a case in court.
And another aspect that they were dissatisfied with was that they kind of wanted a compensation because of the hardship they had to go through in terms of losing out on their business or in terms of the mental trauma they faced. But in that aspect, the court basically said that, you have the liberty to agitate that point, to take up that point before the appropriate forum, which is basically the consumer court or a civil court, asking for damages. But at the same time, the court does have extraordinary jurisdiction to impose cost if it had wanted to, which it did not, for whatever reasons that we don't know. It's not really explained. And Amit's point was also this, that, when a civilian, the common person, defaults on a loan and say they can't pay the interest amount or even the principal amount, tomorrow if they go to a bank and admit their mistake that, see, I did not have the money then, I have the money now, so, take this money and let it go. It doesn't really work like that. The bank will impose extra interest on you. The bank will basically put a penalty cost on you. So their broader point was, why was ED not subjected to the same when the hardship being faced by the other party is much more than, say, what a bank faces if someone doesn't pay the loan? So, yeah, all in all, but for now, I think they are relieved that at least this order has come out where their bank account will be restored and they can actually move on from this whole ordeal.
You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was written and produced by me, Shashank Bhargava, and was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.